afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of We're Gonna Need a Bigger Show. This is a very special episode. We are really super excited to be sitting in the studios of Gun Media today with gentlemen. Will you please introduce yourselves?
I'm Ronnie Hobbs, co-creator on the game.
And I'm Wes Keltner, the other co-creator.
We are talking with the gentlemen who are creating the Friday the 13th video game.
Here's what you need. Dun, dun, dun. You need a
Right?
cue, stinger,
Some good music.
Yeah, kick Manfredini another nickel.
Right.
So this is the very first Friday the 13th video game since the LJN catastrophe back in the day.
I tried to get all my references about that game out on the car ride up, but I'm afraid I still have more. So if one comes out, I'm sorry.
Did you see the Mega 64 video that came out?
I think we were just talking about that.
Oh my
Friday the
perfect.
13th, the game, the movie.
Yep.
So,
Great.
what
was
was the
spot
line
on.
about the lamps?
It was
I just
perfect.
have a
Why,
feeling.
why do we have to light all the fires? I just have a feeling. Perfect.
Yeah.
But this is huge, guys. I mean, this is a really big deal, right? I mean,
No doubt
You
about
tell
it.
us.
well, we're here.
We
I
think
mean,
it is.
You know, it was one of those things. I mean, it's been talked about for years.
Yeah.
You know, on and off through different channels. Even, you know, I mean, when summer camp was announced, it was like, okay, we're close.
Right.
You know, then Kane was announced as part of it, and Savini, and it was like, wow, okay.
Well, I mean, that's sort of the inception of that is, Ronnie and I have always talked about trying to make something like this for quite some time.
Sure.
Years and years in the past, just sort of brainstorming ideas and talking about cool things. And we kind of got to a point where the more of that discussion we were having, it was happening more frequently to the point it was almost every other day we were saying, and man, it would be cool if you did this and it'd be cool if you did that. And Ronnie was just smart enough to start jotting some of those things down
Sure.
and start actually putting together a proper, design doc about it. And then, someday or something, I came in and said something. He's like, "Oh yeah," and he like picked up his laptop. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And I go over there. I'm like, "Holy shit, you got this thing like already,
Well-
starting to get mapped out here." So
even before that, I mean, this is a huge franchise. Even as summer camp, it's very horror centric. I mean, I would imagine you guys were horror fans growing up. I mean, what was your horror background
we
like
have
growing up?
Mostly different backgrounds, and so does a lot of people on the team.
Okay.
that's a time period difference,
It
actually.
is, yeah. Because that's what's great about horror. You can casually enjoy it, or you can just go ahead and be obsessed with it. And so the same holds true for a lot of our guys
Sure.
on the team. But mine actually saw a lot of the giallo films before I saw American slashers. This guy locally would rent these. He owned the local movie store, and he would give us these tapes. We were like 8. And we're watching Bay of Blood and then Opera and Inferno, and I'm just like, what the hell am I watching? But then you couldn't get enough. He's like, here, take this one. So we go back, and then I saw, of course, Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So there's this guy somewhere.
Yeah.
That's now some old
It was
old
a
cat.
horror
Yeah,
peddler.
he's responsible for this
Right,
game,
he's responsible
partly.
for Friday the 13th.
But I think a lot of us
Yeah.
probably had that VHS store that was, and
no doubt.
the guy at the front counter. Hey,
Exactly.
if you like that, how about this?
Yeah, because it wasn't even an official store. Everyone had one of these, right?
Right.
It was like
in the supermarket or
Yeah.
something.
it was deep in a dungeon. You would go down some stairs,
Yeah, exactly.
and he would see us hiding the games we wanted to rent but couldn't afford them at the moment. We'd hide them behind the shitty games
Right.
because we knew that kids would come. So we'd go back home and get money from our parents, and we'd go back, and he'd be like, take this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what are we watching? But
See, I had the kid in school who's probably had like the worst parents ever that just
Right.
didn't care what he
Right.
did, and so most of the kids would want to go over to his house and spend the night on the weekends, and so we'd go down and basically rent whatever we wanted to rent. So it was,
and they would rent it to you.
Yeah, well, actually the mom would go in with us.
She's like, just take it, whatever, just be quiet.
Stack of them and set them on the counter. And
This
she's
one
like,
looks scary.
Whatever, like she would just go ahead and buy it for us. She's like, "Y'all want pizza?" We're like, "Yeah." And then we would go back and
High fiving each
I know,
other.
exactly. But I mean, I know now thinking about it, it's like just because she didn't want to fuck with us. Like
Yeah,
she just wanted to be
basically.
like, "Go here, just
She's
go."
like, here, shut up for the whole night.
Exactly. And we did. We would just sit in the basement and watch them. But it became sort of like a rite of passage,
Right.
to can you set through these, and like you're looking around the room with your other buddies and you're like, who's like actually
Who's
getting
punking out the
scared,
most?
right, and you would like riff on them for being chicken shit
Right.
about the movie. So
Yeah.
it became a part of that for me. But for Ronnie has a much deeper and longer knowledge of horror films, like he was stating, dating back to the films of the 60s and
70s, yeah.
70s, Argento and those icons in the industry. For me, it was more like I picked up right around the first Nightmare on Elm Street and started watching more of the 80s time frame. Basically, when you're kids, you don't know shit about good movies, so you just walk into
You watch it all.
You just look at the cover art, right?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
like, Puppet Master, sure.
The Breakfast Club
puppets.
spread on Texas Chainsaw 2.
Yeah.
That was the one that got me every time I went to the video store.
God, I always wanted to rent Slumber Party Massacre.
Yeah,
yeah, because
With
it
the
looks
drill?
so.
It was,
the
but it was the
drill?
one. Yes, it was the one that the mom was like,
Yeah.
because there's
She
like,
drew the line on that one.
because there's like girls in
Naked.
naked.
Yeah, the power drill.
and then you have this big phallic power drill. Yeah,
Totally.
And you're like, how the hell do you get this power drill in the house? Like, it's like 8 feet long.
I mean, I wasn't even.
I'm like, who's walking around with this?
I wasn't even old enough to know what to do with a woman.
Yeah, but you thought it was awesome.
But I knew it was wrong and risque, and I'm like, I want to see this really bad.
And then you watch it.
And I watched it like later, and I'm like,
And you're like, that's not even scary. It's
Yeah,
like the whole
exactly.
Video Nasties thing, if
Yep.
you've seen that documentary. It's, how can we outdo the other cover art?
Sure.
You get this awesome cover art. It's like, worst movie ever.
Right.
Nothing that's represented in the cover is actually in the
I
movie.
mean, in the UK with the DPP or whatever
What is that number?
the government that
Regulates it.
there you go, the force that sort of looked over like what films were allowed into the UK and
Sure.
what was banned. That so much of that was based on the cover art first.
Wow.
To the point that all those distributors,
It was all marketing.
that's what it came
right.
down to is they would find
Yeah.
these crappy indie films and say, okay, shoot a couple more, death scenes or something in there, and then we're going to change your cover art and probably the name of your.
And say, add,
And-
add
but they
the
knew-
word cannibal.
They knew things like they knew like word cannibal instantly.
Yep.
It's banned from the UK. If you put a drill anywhere on the scene, banned. If it had anything about like rape, even if you didn't have rape in the movie,
Yep.
you just said it on the back of your band instantly.
Right.
But that then became. Like you wanted to be on that blacklist because
Yeah.
it became so coveted by
Yeah.
horror fans.
Sure.
They're like, oh, this must be really bad if they won't even let it in the country.
Sure.
Turns out
have to get it.
They're mostly all crap, but
Yeah, right,
still.
So they would go reshoot one scene with a cannibal in it.
Right.
Different camera, different location.
Yeah, yeah.
It was obviously
Yeah.
spliced in. You're like,
Oh yeah.
but people did it. So.
Well, so I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as
Yeah,
we
sorry,
go on.
we went off
no,
the
no,
rails.
no,
No,
that's
no,
it. This is
that's
this is
what
our
podcasts
lifeblood.
do.
Believe me,
Okay.
this is what
So we can
live
nerd
for.
out a little
Oh
bit.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. We're a bunch of nerds. But I mean, kind of with the Kickstarter campaign, that's your VHS cover art. Like the video is your chance to sell it. For the first time.
right.
And in talking about that you've had this idea for some sort of horror game for years. When did you two meet, and when did you start to work on things together?
How long have we been friends?
We've known each other for ever.
15 years?
At
Wow.
least.
Okay.
We started writing for some really small website that was local, and that's how we met.
Right.
And then we just did all kinds of cool shit together.
Did you grow up here in this area?
Yeah,
Okay.
he grew up in a different part of Kentucky.
A small town,
but
Campbellsville.
I grew up around here.
Okay.
But we both met. I came here in like '98 or something like that.
Yeah.
I started going to UK, but
That's where we met, yeah.
But yeah, he and I hooked up there, started writing for a small website, and realized that
We had some
we
other
had
stuff to
bigger
do.
ideas
Yeah.
that journalism just didn't quite fit what
Sure.
we were after. So we started doing.
Yeah,
some
we were the guys trying to sneak into E3, writing the shitty blog articles,
Right.
and then sneaking into parties, and then that was our whole thing. Was like get to E3 in LA and live that kind of dream, and then
Right.
we started making our own games. We had a consulting firm first, and an ad agency, and all this other stuff. We were working in games indirectly,
And it was all building to
introducing brands like Ford and those guys to the
Yeah.
video game market.
Right.
They were really struggling. All those
Yeah.
big brands were struggling to figure out like, oh wait, video games is like a real thing.
Sure.
Like that's a thing that people love to do, and we're like, average age is 34.
You
They
can
make
put a
79
product
grand
in a
a year.
game.
And
This,
they're
Right.
like,
this was like 15 years ago, or whatever, or 10.
so they were struggling.
So
with,
we did that, and then we had a consulting firm. So we worked for like Sony, Microsoft, EA, all those guys, working on their games behind the scene. And then
Right.
we're like, enough of that. So we made Breach and Clear. That was our first game, and we had to figure out what was next.
Right.
So that's how that whole summer camp idea got started.
So, Ronnie, you present, summer camp. That you pull it
Yeah.
up. I mean, how far in did you guys start to get into this progress, and before you started to think, this might be a bigger thing, or before Sean approached you?
yeah. Well, I mean, we never had any kind of delusions or anything that it was going to become Friday the 13th, and we never thought that this was going to be, when it was summer camp, that it was going to be like super huge in terms of impact it might make on the industry. We just knew that there was a void in the market for a thing that, for us, it was, we had this love affair with 80 slashers, and so why is that not really represented right now in the market. And so that was probably 2 years ago or something when we first started to really get serious about we should try to do this. And so we spent a long time working together, going frame by frame from a lot of slasher movies, and you watch a few seconds, you pause it, you take some notes, watch a few seconds, pause it, and then he would go watch these 4 or 5 movies, I'll go watch these 4 or 5 movies, and we come back and and work together, and how do you put that together into feature sets and mechanics into a game that is fun. And so that's sort of the genesis of summer camp, sort of getting to a slow crawl there.
Sure.
And that's when we identified the dev studio, Ilphonic, and the reason why we hooked up with those guys is because they had just finished Evolve.
Sure.
They did some work on Evolve,
and with that kind of track record of at least understanding asymmetrical gameplay, and it was kind of the only thing on the market currently that was asymmetric. I thought, hey, there's a team that we should at least bounce this design off of and see what they think about it. It just so happened that Kedron, their creative director, we meet the guy and he's like straight metal as
super
fuck.
metal. I mean, he loves horror.
he's awesome, and we were like, oh, thank God, like that you get this. Like it wasn't like there's some
We didn't have to talk him into it.
right. It wasn't like some
We didn't have to explain horror to him.
That came in and was like, have you seen the new Call of Duty or whatever? It was not that at all. Like it was the complete opposite. We were like, thank God, they're going to actually understand the subject matter.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure you're probably going to get to this maybe later, and it may be part of the question you just asked. I'm trying to remember. But the whole premise of summer camp was kind of based on we hadn't seen anything in the industry like it, because there was never this one killer, whether it's a human or a monster, stalking a group of vulnerable people. And so this whole killer versus counselors was never achieved in the industry for whatever reason. It's never been replicated in that scale.
So what's interesting though is now,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like at the time that you guys had the idea for summer camp, there becomes this kind of flash in the pan of other people wanting
all
to
of a sudden there was like 3 or 4
slasher games, Until Dawn and
Until Dawn. And at the time, we heard rumblings that there was a Friday the 13th game.
Well, so that was so to speak a little bit about that real quick.
Sure.
I mean, Sean had announced a game in which Jason hunts counselors, and you play as either Jason or the counselors.
Yes.
Were you involved at that point?
Yeah,
at
I think
all?
it was perfect timing on our side.
That's
didn't
incredible.
know them.
That's
After
so
all
incredible.
these years,
Yeah.
who knew that timing we would have? It's almost like it's fate. I don't want to say that's silly, but
No, that's
after all these years, we finally get this idea perfected.
Oh, my God.
And at the same time, they're looking for a game.
that's incredible.
And what's crazy is we thought we were getting trolled
Yeah, no shit, legit.
because they sent an email and we were like,
We stared at this email for how long?
days.
No, more than that.
No, I mean before I even said anything. It was
He
days.
stared at it for like days, and then he shared it with us, and I was like,
Yeah,
it's like,
the whole
hey,
team. We're all reading this thing, and we're like,
This is
I
bullshit.
don't know, man. This is. I
We're
don't
waiting
know.
to write back and haha.
And finally, I write something back like, oh, this is interesting. Tell me more. Like I was very very vanilla in my response. Just to see like what. And they, there's a couple more that came through, and we were all just kind of like, this doesn't. I don't know.
You're
don't
terrified
know.
because if it is real,
So we just left it in the inbox for a month.
seriously, we didn't know
Thinking
what to do.
totally like, this is somebody trying.
Everyone knows Friday the 13th team, right? I know this guy, I know that guy. I can get you the license. I can do this. We had tons of those emails, but this one seemed the most legit. But we were still scared, so we just ignored it.
And
We're
plus, we were dancing a little close to the flame in terms of the visual approach and the design to summer camp.
Well,
there
at
was
this
a lot
point,
of
you-
reference towards Friday the 13th.
Sure.
To
Well,
the
at this point,
that-
you had Manfredini.
Yeah, we had a Friday the 13th game without the actual license.
So
we thought that might be what this email was getting to.
Right.
Hey,
Yes.
you want to have a meeting? Yeah. Oh, guess what?
injunction.
Here's a little letter for you.
Yeah.
Because we're like, 'cause we were very, very careful not to cross that line.
Sure.
The only thing we
Forest
did,
Green.
Forest Green. We named the campground
Forest
Forest Green. That was the only thing we did that we were like, God,
Because we can always change that. It just works, right? So we knew if we
But our
anything
first,
past that,
was our first piece of concept art, and IGN just like blows it up all over the front page, and we
Sure.
were like, oh shit, and they even called it out. They're like, oh, and they called it Forest Green, and we're like, oh god, like here
Looking out the blinds
Yeah.
at night,
It's exactly what it was.
so
Exactly.
we were close already. So we were kind of a little scared of that letter or the email, and then it was perfect timing to answer your question.
Sure.
We think.
Well, and starting to work with Sean and starting to develop this, what did you discover was like, okay, this still works, that what we had for summer camp, this still works? And when did you have to start to mold it for Friday the
Sure.
13th?
I mean, when Sean came to us, he said, well, I love the artwork I've already seen. And he had a kind of a go-between guy that is more game-centric because Sean is, film. So he doesn't, he's not a guy that sits down with a design doc and goes, yep, nope, I understand completely. Like, that's not his strength. So he has, sort of a guy in between there to read through. And so that was like the first, their first request was, can we get access to look at your design doc?
Which was even equally as terrifying.
Sure.
Yes. Right. So we're like,
At this point, we're a small company.
Right.
We couldn't fight anything if worse came. And so we got past that. And we shared with
it's,
them.
it felt like, Ronnie and I are in this like boat in the ocean, and the sharks are like, no, dude, just swim.
Just jump on in, bro.
swim.
It's good.
Taking on water.
Yeah.
It's not
Stick your foot in. I promise I won't bite it.
Swim nude if you want to. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So we're like
that. There's a little bit of that, so we were like, okay.
luckily we jumped in, obviously.
Right.
And then, but yeah, Sean is awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean, once, the design was read by his team and then sort of broken down and explained to him, he's like, this is exactly what this should be.
Wow.
And so when he calls us up, he says, you've got a great design, you got great art. Hell, you've already got my team.
That's what he said.
He's like, you're missing two things, me and the license.
Sure.
And I'm like,
You're right.
well, yeah, but
We can't afford it.
here's the thing. Yeah, we're a tiny little team. We don't have that kind of
Right.
money. The licensing fees would be crazy. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I believe in this project. I believe in your team. I want to give this to you gratis. And we're like,
That's insane.
holy hell,
And
So,
you're like, what's the catch?
so we're like trying to keep a straight face on the phone. We're like, oh, wow, thanks, Sean. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like, meanwhile,
We're high-fiving.
Oh my God,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Just doing ridiculous.
Just as a fan, and I've heard this, I heard it in the pitch video, but hearing you say it out loud, it's just, my mind is
It really
blown.
is.
I mean, this is insanity.
Craziest.
it was insane.
Like
It still
Randy,
is insane.
Of
Randy
course.
Greenback, our executive director, has been in this industry for 20, 30 years.
Yep.
He's never seen anything like this, and no one that we've ever spoken to is. There's never been a scenario where this has happened this way.
Fate is not
I mean,
the wrong
imagine
word to
creating
use. I mean,
whatever it is you care about the most in the world. Imagine creating an homage to that, and then,
Yeah.
then that person comes to you and says, "Here, good job."
Right.
You're just
That's
like-
what that was.
That's what that felt like. It's insane.
Because I mean, I know it's a very PR thing to say, and it has been
Yeah.
said, but it's freaking true.
not bullshit.
Is that
Like-
we were legitimately writing a love letter to that, and Sean Cunningham answered it.
Yeah.
And with unbelievable offering, just
Right.
wow, we were floored by
When we
it.
were shooting our Kickstarter video, we got invited to his house,
Sure.
of course, and we're looking around, and there's Tom and Kane and Sean and Harry, and we're like, how did we get here? Like, you're looking around in awe. You're like, I don't
Yeah, and then
know.
the Roy guy walks in, the
Yeah.
monster creator from made
Just-
Cloverfield and made
all these cool people are
just-
right there in the
you're
same
like,
room.
what?
We're like,
Sessler's there, that's
It's like-
yeah,
even
that's a whole different
that's
concept
a whole
of Sessler.
Right,
I'm
exactly,
sure you
yeah.
have questions about him, but yeah.
But and as guys, I mean, we're from Tennessee, and
Yeah.
it's you guys are from here.
You can understand.
That's a big deal,
Yeah.
and it's we're filmmakers, Cameron and I, so it's kind of this,
You can relate.
it's this that's so wild. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just this.
There's always this impression that you're supposed to be living somewhere else to be making entertainment.
I know,
You
right?
what I mean?
Right.
Especially in the video game industry, even in film. I mean,
But no,
same
I
thing.
would say that with your industry,
Yeah.
I mean, in doing the research, for the interview, and when I reached out to y'all
Yep.
and discovered, you're in Lexington, you're 3 hours away.
Yeah.
Can we go there? Can
Yeah.
we do this? This is incredible. Like, can we
Yeah.
make it doesn't. It's like these things shouldn't.
Yeah, you're
connect.
somewhere in LA
Yeah.
or
Right,
Seattle.
yeah,
or
exactly.
at the very least, North Carolina.
Right.
There's some hot spots of gaming. So,
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Lexington is not one of those. So for us, there's a
Right.
couple other small indie devs here, but yeah, it's a small
It's
town.
wild.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you bring on, Sean's a part of it. You've got Savini and
Yeah.
Kane and Manfredini. What does, what do you approach them with? What do you want their roles to be? And especially with Savini, I mean,
Yeah.
he's creating, from what I've gathered, a new look for Jason, which
Yeah.
is something he hasn't done in 30 years.
Yeah,
Right. Well, I went to Savini first, actually. That was
Sure.
the first person I contacted when we knew summer camp was, we really had something together in design, like we knew it was solid. That was the first step, was to go to Savini and see if he was interested in the project. And it was literally a cold email. Like, I'd never met him before. Like, seen him at horror conventions, but that's about it. You know, like, and of course was very familiar with his work, but that's where it ended there. So I just sent him a cold email and said, hey, here's this thing we're doing, and I explained, like, you know, real quick sentences of what the project was about, and see if he wanted to get, you know, involved in that in any way. And he wrote back like, heck yeah, like, this sounds awesome.
Like, I mean, that's even just unbelievable right there. So he comes to the room, he's like, Savini wrote back. I'm like, shut up, dude. He's like, no, seriously.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's all it took?
Yeah.
An email? And all of a sudden you're working with Tom Savini? It's insane.
But I find that when if you're really passionate about something that you're working on, and you can convey that properly to another person that's in a creative field, that they have a pretty strong filter for bullshit. Like, they can kind of figure out what's legit and what's not, especially someone like Savini, who's been around the block a few times. I'm sure he's had a few
hears it
guys
every day.
pitch him projects that may or may not sound that great. So the more that the more that we're hanging out with those guys, and the more that we talk to other potential people that may become part of the project, the more I realize that if you're honest and transparent and passionate about the subject matter, like, you're going to start drawing those people in. Like, they want to get involved because they're like, that sounds awesome.
Sure.
So
So Savini's going to be obviously recreating our kills for us. So in a practical way, we don't want Mortal Kombat effects where Jax does the head clap and your head explodes.
Right.
This is volumetric blood if we can. This is ways to slice the throat and design environmental kills, grab melee kills, weapon-based kills. How do these things happen? What it looks like when a hand gets severed. Because only he knows that.
Absolutely.
He's a master of that. So that's Savini's job,
Right.
as well as create a brand new look for Jason.
Sure.
because it was important to not look arcadey for us.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But keep it practical at the same time. You know, keep it realistic based.
Right.
So.
In beginning this road of Friday the 13th, how much of the franchise, did you have to go back and really, pick over? And I mean,
I've seen these movies probably 100 times, each one, just from my childhood
Sure.
and growing up. But it's good to have a refresher. We absolutely watched them all over and over and over again. And the whole
Plus
team.
Crystal Lake memories.
Yeah.
Oh,
Plus
yeah.
any hidden footage and any documentation, every message board, every Friday 13th fan site, every single piece of photos that you can find behind the scenes.
skip over
everything.
the series.
Yes, we did not watch that. But yeah, so it's just, you have to do your research again. So make sure that your memory holds up.
Absolutely. At what point, I mean, the Kickstarter has been huge. I mean, it very quickly just skyrocketed.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And I'm sure with that, you're hearing a lot from, fans and people who are contributing and feel like that they want their voice to be heard.
Yeah.
And of course, I know that you want to hear those voices, but at what point do you have to say, okay, we've heard you, and then you have to just figure out, well, what works for the game and what doesn't? I mean, what's that process
Sure.
like?
Well, I mean, we read every single comment, period.
We have over 4,000 comments at this point. We've read them all.
Every single one of them.
We've
And-
actually read them and thought about them too. Not just
Sure.
anyone can read them and just ignore them.
And you
There's
see,
some good ideas in there. mean,
I know.
you see some things that start to become, kind of sort of a broken record in the comments. You're like, yeah, I know that's a thing that you guys want. The problem with some of them is that, that we don't have carte blanche to the license. It's not like
Right.
anything that's ever been Friday the 13th, you can do that. Like, no,
Yeah.
we can't. Like Freddy v. Jason, can't touch it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as
Right.
what we're working with. So,
Yeah.
so there is some limitations to what we can actually put into the game. So some of those comments that we read were like, yeah, that would be kind of cool, but
Yeah.
we can't do that. Like we can't. So, but there also has to become a line where, some fans, which I absolutely adore listening and hearing from them, but some of them send their own design docs. And that
We can't
becomes a
read it.
legal issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we can't even touch
We don't
it.
even open them.
Like, there's been some physically came in the mail, and we start to open the package, and I realize what it is, and I'm like, "Dibba-doo."
Like I would love to be able to read those just as a gamer guy, but we can't.
Yeah.
So that's one of the hard
Especially
things. They put a lot of work
if,
into them.
If we were, if we were something still kind of small, we could probably kind of get away with reading some of the letters from the fans and things. But when you have that license attached to it, it makes it more difficult.
Sure.
Because if the game is successful and
That one guy's like, "You read my document."
In where you stick a dead guy in the refrigerator, and he's like, "Oh, some guy somewhere's like, that was my idea," and he's like, "Get my lawyer on the phone." Not that they would go, that someone would be malicious like that, but there is someone in the world that may be that way. And when you have a license is that identifiable, the crosshairs are on it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we listen to all of them. That's the point, and we love hearing about it. At some point, ideas are cheap. What actually costs a lot is putting them in the game. And not always people understand what things cost in the video game industry. They're like, hey, just do bots. I'm like, those are so expensive.
Right.
AI is one of the most expensive things you can create in a game. You don't want Jason just running against the wall in place.
Sure.
Right.
And nothing breaks the immersion worse than shitty AI.
Right.
Yes.
So just something as simple as that costs so much money. So.
It's funny. I sometimes in just reading the comments, and because as a fan, I've followed the process of this. It seems like some people just think it's as easy as dropping Friday the 13th elements into an already finished game.
Sure.
And, that's clearly not the case.
Right.
Yeah. 'Cause we actually went on hold for a while. During this whole process, we
got to a certain point.
We had to make a decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we were head down into the prototype, and that's when you're designing and developing a game, it's probably the most crucial part of the entire project is to get to a prototype as fast as you can, so that you're testing the feature set and theories that you have that are on paper.
Right.
Because they may sound great when you write them, and then you put them into the world and you start poking at them, you're like, this sucks, or actually this is super fun, let's turn the volume up on that. So you don't know that until you're touching it and you're playing it. So that's step one, is take all these theories, make them real as fast as you possibly can, and then
the pretty comes later.
test. You just keep prototyping until you get to a point when everyone is, not only are we checking off the feature list and going, yep, that's fun, but it's also even the more subtle things where in the playtest, I may have gotten killed first, and so I'm just sort of stepping back and hanging out, but I'm hearing all the screams and laughter that's happening over the mic, and I'm like, we've got something. Like, this is... Yeah. If we're right now just in a prototype, and you're still having those moments of, oh shit, like you have that happen, like that's,
you're on the right path.
You're doing something right. And so for us, there is a tremendous cost trying to get some of the things that we want put in there, and some of the things that fans want. I wish there was a more, I guess, transparent request sort of thing, where someone's like, man, it would be really cool if, like he mentioned, if you had AI that did that could like pop up a price sheet for that commenter. And you're like, oh my god, it would be that much? And you're like, yeah, it's no longer
like window
$30
shopping,
game,
and
it's
we would
now
actually show them
a $60 game
Right.
if you want that, like FYI.
And the
plus,
budget's double.
and we need another 9 months.
Right.
So if you're all right with that, then
Sure. Yeah.
So,
It was funny. We put together like a little in Game Maker put together like a little Mega Man style shooter for a movie that we made, and immediately the comments were, "Cool, make it do this. Oh, make it do this. Make it do this." And I'm like, I've pasted a bunch of code and I just put shoots fire or whatever. And I'm like, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're like, oh, it didn't work. I don't know what happened. I know exactly. Shoots fire.
So, in talking about the things to include, the things not to include, and in the, just the prototype playtest right now, I mean, you're having those oh shit moments, those genuine scares, and it seems like that would have been a real challenge to do with summer camp, but now you have the ultimate Jason.
Right.
You have Kane Hodder. I mean, he's the obvious choice, but I mean, is it possible that we're going to see other Jasons, or
Well,
I mean,
if you mean actors playing those Jasons, then no.
okay, so that I guess that's kind of what I mean. Is it going to be like
Kane
a
Hodder
skin
will be
situation?
taking Richard Brooker's place for part 3.
Right. So all right.
So
right.
Obviously he's passed away, so
Sure.
we couldn't get him anyway. But Kane is our mocap guy for all the different versions of Jasons we have in our game.
Awesome.
So it's a way for Kane to go back and replay all the original Jasons.
Right.
which is
So
kind of cool if you
yeah,
think about it.
It's
Yeah, I
definitely a
mean,
cool thing.
just having Kane involved at all.
Yeah.
I mean, like he says, I mean, he was not ready to hang
Hang
it
the
up,
mask up.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the fact that he's back is
Yeah.
just as much a big thing for him as it is for all of us. So,
yeah.
So I'm sure you saw the Sackhead announcement.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Sackhead is the third playable Jason that we've confirmed.
Awesome.
So we're going to have a few more of those fan favorites that we haven't quite revealed yet.
Very cool.
How much of this is going to be in space?
Believe it or not, the Grendel is a stretch goal. Oh shit!
That's fine.
It's okay. Yeah. By the time this goes up, it'll be too late. The stretch goal will be revealed.
All right.
Yeah. You won't be floating through space by the window.
Sure.
Right? We thought it would be a cool map to explore potentially, but
pretty
it will cost a lot of money. So
Right,
it's a very high stretch goal.
Yeah.
Well, so we have a few listener questions.
Oh, sweet.
So our buddy Zach Lindsay, in talking about different maps and things like that, he's wondering, is DLC a big part of what you're wanting to do? Will there be different films or different maps that you want to explore, whether it be through stretch goals or beyond?
Yeah, the way that we're approaching it is we want to get this core of what we know we want Friday the 13th to be. We want that done first. To me, it feels kind of icky to start talking about DLC right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
If we once this is built and fans are loving it and we're working with the community and they're saying, man, it'd be cool if we did this, it'd be cool if we did that or whatever, and we're seeing those comments come through, then that could be something we can discuss at that point. But I feel like it's premature and I don't know, kind of
On their dollar, already talk about DLC.
Sure.
But I think that didn't feel right because we're not holding anything back in terms of like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's hang on that for DLC, make more money. That's not us because
We want as much cool shit in the game as we can get.
No question.
So
no question.
It all comes down to the Kickstarter budget. We have this has already been revealed, but we do have one main map right now, and it's Camp Crystal Lake proper, the main area. But as you know from the films, Jason moves around a lot. All these characters aren't just at Camp Crystal Lake.
Right.
There's the Higgins house. There's the Jarvis house. There's Packanack Lodge from Part 2. These are all different areas of Crystal Lake. We would love nothing more than to have all those things in our game, but at some point we have to perfect the original map.
Sure.
See what our budget allows for on Kickstarter, and then we can go, okay, what's next?
Sure.
What's a different part of Crystal Lake?
Absolutely.
So if somehow those don't make it, like Wes said, and the fans just love this game and they're demanding it, we would absolutely create DLC later down the road.
Or we try to find some money
To do it
in the interim to try to
make
get it
it
in there.
ourselves. Yeah.
Sure.
So
One of our other listeners, Chad Abushanab, wanted to know, one of the things you guys talk about may or may not make as a stretch goal would be a single player. How would that play out?
yeah, so we've discussed this too. No, I'm not saying that because like you should know.
Sure,
I'm saying
sure.
that like there's no reason to like spoil this or anything.
No.
We have our single player. We have the bots as a stretch goal.
Okay.
So that might be offline play bots.
Sure.
So that if the servers ever go down, you can, or if you don't like playing online, you can play against bots.
Sure.
That's a separate stretch goal. But our single player, we'll actually do single player challenges. These would be little set pieces or some of the most incredible set pieces from the films. And we would let you relive those moments and maybe rewrite history. And then we'd also have some new ones that we created from scratch. So just one example, and this might not be in our game, but it would be like Jason's kicking down the door to a cabin or a house.
You're like upstairs in a room,
You hear
asleep
Jason.
or something.
Sure.
It's like get the keys and escape or find a weapon and fight Jason.
Yeah.
So, and he's kicking the door down and he's going to come through and find you.
Right.
So it's 2 to 3, 3 to 5 minute, small interval, very intense
one way to look
moments.
at it is if you're, that's if you're playing the role as a counselor. If you're playing the role as Jason in that challenge, it would be like a very small, very focused, not quite as feature heavy Hitman.
Okay.
If you ever played any of the
Yeah,
Hitman
yeah,
series,
yeah.
sort of in line with that, where
Okay.
you have 3 or 4 targets in the area.
Sure.
Don't let them escape.
Don't let them get away, and
Right.
the more creative that you are, more XP you're going to get.
That's awesome.
So yeah, like there's unlimited amount of scenarios that we can do and
Right.
just create from scratch. But also the moments from the films are just
Absolutely.
endless that you can recreate. So
One of our other listeners, Mike McDaniel, wanted to know how Jason's powers work in the game and like what we could expect to see from that.
we've definitely talked about. So what we couldn't have is people just camping around all night and just hiding in one space. So Jason, it's his camp. He knows where you're going to be. So it's like the longer you stay in one spot, the more likely it will be for him to find you. Jason also has this sound where you can hear what you're doing. So the more noise you make, the louder you'll show up on his radar, so to speak. He also has this blood sense where he can activate it and he can see heat or he can see blood. He can recognize you from a distance, and that plays into our fear system. So the more frightened you are, the more likely it is he can see you effectively on the map. And of course, everyone knows Jason morphs around the map. Like in the remake, he had tunnels. We're not having tunnels in our game.
Right.
So you have to explain to the user how Jason gets around the map. So morphing is one way to do that. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about, when you're playing as a counselor, it's, being smart,
Yep.
slow down a little bit, get your wits, and maybe finding someone else if you want to play as a team, or if you want a lone wolf, you can do that. It's smart to stay in the light, get inside,
Yep.
try to get yourself out of that situation. If you just take off running in the woods, you're not gonna last very
Yeah.
long.
It's all based on the fight or flight psychological mentality.
Sure.
That,
It's a very very cat and mouse type
Yep.
experience, and the smarter that you are in looking at your surroundings and using your surroundings to hide, to slide under a bed, to
find a weapon.
Right.
get in a room and lock the door, like that's going to stop him, but it's going to slow him down where you may be able to jump out a window.
Sure.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So in doing this, I mean, you it's clear just from talking with y'all that there's big fan heart here. What has it been like meeting fans and talking to fans and just hearing from similar people who've grown up with this and who have loved it as much as you have?
For me personally, it's very surreal, and I guess a little. I'm like, no, dude, I'm just like you. Like I just happened to right place, right timing.
Yeah.
It just sort of that occurred. There's nothing special or anything like that. So for me, it's humbling, surreal, and a little confusing a little bit. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, I mean, I understand the responsibility that comes with that license, and I want to make sure that we do that right for everyone, because everyone deserves to have a good Friday the 13th game.
Sure.
So there's some of that keeps me up at night, but when fans reach out to us and talk to us, I try to respond to every single one of them and say, thanks for supporting the game, or thanks for the idea, or thanks for whatever. People send in pictures of themselves dressed up as Jason, whatever. Like it's awesome. Like I think it's
They bring
cool.
in some weirdos bring in masks. Like it's
Right. But I mean, for me, it's just like, yeah, man. If I had that mask, I'd bring it too, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's just sort of we're the same thing. So it's kind of weird when I don't know. There's when they don't approach you in a way that just says, "Hey, look how cool this is. You're a nerd just like I am."
Sure.
It's a little different, and I'm like, no, I am a nerd just like you. Like, just let's talk shop.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is they come up to you and they're like, "Oh, thank you," and I'm like, "We're just like you, honestly.
Yeah.
We just kind of got lucky and we had the right idea at the right moment." But for me, it's more about it's like validation for your idea that people
That's true.
think it's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Because if you think about it for so long, you're like, I don't know if this is actually good. And then you announce it and people are like, that sounds awesome. You're like, thank God. I'm not stupid. Like, right?
it's that creative process thing.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've
'cause-
ever seen that list. And
Yeah,
it's like, this is awesome.
Exactly. It's like-
I don't know what I'm doing. This is shit.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm shit.
I'm
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this
is awesome.
Exactly. That happens over the course of years.
Right.
Yeah.
If you want to,
Yeah.
you've been wanting to make a Friday 13th game or play one your entire life. So
Right.
you've been thinking these ideas, and they're always shitty. And finally, you think of a good one, and then everyone's like, "Yeah, it's awesome." But yeah, it's like just seeing these people line up. We were Wizard World, and every single person in the panel lined up afterwards to talk to us. We spoke to every single person for hours, and to see their excitement, I'm like, "That's the exact way we feel."
Sure.
Only now we're the ones that actually get to do it. So there is that sense of responsibility that I do not want to be the person to fuck this up.
Right.
Right. Because I know that every Friday 13th fan on the planet is looking for us and our team to like deliver on that. So it's not too much pressure, but just a little,
Yeah.
Well, and finishing up, the original title of the game was Slasher Volume 1.
Correct.
Yep.
Now that, I don't know how far in the future
If that
y'all-
one was actually on there or on accident? Is that what
Well,
you're asking?
I mean, is there, now that it's Friday the 13th,
Right.
is there a plan for more Friday the 13th, or would you like to visit other licenses? Because summer camp is just one slasher location,
Yeah.
is there any,
Well,
what's the dream?
I mean, if this game is successful and the powers that be want us to take a shot at a sequel to it, like that would be a dream. Like heck yeah. But we want to make sure we concentrate on doing this one right first. And so that's where all of our brains are dedicated to is that, and we try not to. I try not to do that sort of thinking of like, and then this will happen, and then
Right.
that'll happen, because like, no, like I'm more of a believer in what we're doing right now. So, I mean, because I guess we could have sat down, wrote a design up, and then started shopping it to someone like a Warner or something to see if we could have gotten a license. But instead we thought, let's just make summer camp.
Right.
And let's just make that. And because we don't have to answer to anyone. We just
Right.
make it the way we want to make it. It just happens that, Sean's like, no, don't fuck up the recipe. What you got is dope. Like, just go with that,
Yeah.
So if that opens up the door later to something else, like, no, I'm not opposed to it, but it's not something that we're out actively like knocking on doors or anything like that, because, we've still got a long road ahead of us, and we still got to prove that this is really going to be good.
Right.
Like, you can say it all day long and show as many gameplay trailers and otherwise, but until you're touching it, until you're standing in Crystal Lake and you look down with a machete in your hand, until you're doing that, like, it's mostly talk until the player gets to actually do that.
Sure.
The point is, you guys have the potential to be the not terrible LJN.
There you go. Exactly. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the other horror IPs that came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
The Texas Chainsaw Game.
Yeah.
And there's also the Nightmare on Elm
Nightmare on Elm
Street.
Street. And they were just
It's
horrible.
real
All
turd.
of the LGN, Jaws, Gremlins,
It's you
Exactly.
play them and you're just like,
They did a Beetlejuice
See
too.
them?
didn't they?
Yeah. But as a kid, did you really know those things were shit?
No,
Because I didn't.
No.
Because you only have so many games,
Here's
right?
the thing: I'll still play the hell out of it
Exactly.
until your game comes out. I will still play the hell out of the Friday the 13th
Exactly.
game,
Like,
Well, you'll get into beta early,
mean,
right?
right? Yeah. So yeah.
I don't know how many games you got as a kid, but it was like 3 or 4 a year, and I would rent most of my shit. So it was like, I'd play it no matter what. I didn't really know it was bad. I just knew that Zelda was better. I didn't know why.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't understand game design.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, this is exactly what Friday the 13th should be. I'm fighting bats and throwing rocks. Like, But you don't really know it
Zombies.
sucks until later. It's always a retrospect.
Right.
Looking back. Go ahead.
All right. So we have brought with us today James Mangrum and Scott Sulfridge, who are very good friends of ours, who have been on the show many times, who are incredible mask makers, who are Friday super fans, and James, you have a question. Lean on in, bud.
Yeah. All right. Obviously, you got Kane to basically take on the role of Jason, and you said he's going to kind of retroactively take on, like, older versions of Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to convince him to run?
Well,
The easy answer is no.
no, you can't convince
Aw.
Kane to run, but that is essential to
I was-
the early versions of Jason. Everyone knows Brooker ran, Ted White ran.
Yeah.
Okay, so he does, because he's still alive at that point. He's not the
Yeah.
superhuman killing force that Kane was in 7, 8, 9, and X.
Yeah.
So it's
Awesome.
about mixing both. But Kane does not like to run.
Right.
So he may actually beat the shit out of us for this at the end of the day. But yeah.
So, but in talking about, we touched on this a little bit earlier. Kane filling in for these other. He's actually going to be taking on the mannerisms of these other.
Once again,
Jasons?
that would be a, Kane would be like, never. We have to do something,
Okay.
He's up to that. I think he's up to that challenge. It's still balancing, like, it's still Kane behind the wheel, if you will. But
Yeah.
but it's interesting to start, because he and I've had long discussions about the differences in the Jasons and what he, of course, brought to the character when he put on the mask. But then, what does that mean going backwards, and what does that look like? And
It's so interesting.
yeah, it's right. Even just how he carries himself versus when you look at some of the, in part 3, the shorter sleeves and the hunchback and
The big
all
neck.
those pieces and how he moves.
He stumbles around in a
Yeah.
human fashion.
Right.
Okay, he's still human at that point.
Right.
He's not dead.
Right.
So he's very much human, and he looks for things, and he throws things out. He trips, he falls, he stumbles. Like, that's perfect for Richard Brooker's character, but Kane didn't do that.
Right. Kane was like, how do you blend a human and a Terminator? Like, that was almost
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that physique, that what he looked like on camera. That's what he started bringing to that, and of course the chest breathing and the other things that he brought to the character. So it's, how do you take that and then look backwards, and then do you try to blend that? What do you try to do? And luckily, he's really good at those kind of things. So the magic's going to happen in the motion capture studio.
To be clear, though, we're still figuring out how Jason moves, how quickly he can. It's maybe not a run, maybe it's a faster gait, a lumbering run. So we're still trying to figure out what he does.
If Kane was sitting here and you say, "Does Jason run?" he would say,
We might not
no,
make it out
Jason
alive.
doesn't run.
So,
I've been choked by Kane before. I don't ever want to.
yeah, he does it for real. So
yeah.
All right.
Scott.
Playing off of talking about Kane and how he's going to portray the character, I think you touched a little bit earlier on possibly having, was it a custom skin, like maybe your own unique Jason, but you'll also have skins from throughout the film possibly, like different styles of Jason. For this custom skin, what is it that you're trying to incorporate from other films? Like, as much as you can say, like, what are you trying to pull from other films? What are you coming up with on your own? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, it starts with Tom.
Sure.
And the conversations that we've been going back and forth with Tom on is that, he sort of gave birth, if you will, to Jason in terms of the look of Jason. But it's trying to create something new but still familiar, because fans don't want to see a Jason that doesn't have pieces that make him Jason, like a hockey mask, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's coming up with something that's new and unique but still very
On canon,
familiar.
yeah.
So that's the challenge that Tom is going to have with that. And then what I'm sort of interested in too is, then do we still use the same locomotion set, which would be Kane's movement, or if this is a new rethought Jason, does he move different?
Sure.
yeah.
Which would be exciting.
So what we don't do is stop Tom at any moment in that process.
Right.
We don't stop like a genius like Tom.
Uh-uh.
We let him do his thing, then we go, okay, how do we put this in?
Right.
So honestly, we couldn't tell you much.
Hey, that's
And that's
I
not a
think that's
cop-out.
reference.
It's a, when Tom is done, Tom will be done.
Right.
And then we'll be like, oh my God.
Well, I think that plays into also, like whenever there's a new remake coming out of a
Sure.
horror film, sometimes in your head you think it's not going to be any good, or then it comes out and it's not any good, or it's great. But either way, we always have the new look. So even though you don't want to see Michael Myers on screen 20 times, or Jason, or
Yeah.
it's just always nice to have that new look. So with the game coming out and having this custom look, it's very exciting to know that y'all are going to have something custom that's never
Yeah.
been seen before, and
Yep.
you're also going to throw back to what we are familiar with, and it's going to be a
Yeah,
good homage.
I mean, we feel the same way, and that's kind of why we did it.
Sure.
I have a question for you guys.
Absolutely.
What sounds more exciting, 1v7 or 7v1, which is the same for the first answer, or 1v1, v1, 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 v1? Because Adam Sessler did a great job of explaining this.
Sure.
And it's something we didn't really think about early on in our process was, this is both cooperative and treacherous at the same time. You don't have to run faster than Jason, you just have to run faster than the person beside you.
Sure.
Well,
So that all is a very interesting dynamic that definitely hasn't been in video games before.
No, it's funny because there's a new board game out. It's called Camp Grizzly. It's a slasher game. It's a
Sweet.
cabin slasher game. But it is that dynamic of, we can help each other
Until the last minute?
until the last minute. And so both are interesting. Both are
Yeah.
equally. So it was like, it's fun to sit around a table and play
Yeah.
a board game with my friends. But then when you guys started to talk about, this is going to be a reality, like this is like real playing time.
Yeah.
Both are equally, for me, for my money, both are equally exciting. It's like that idea of working together against Jason Voorhees,
Yeah.
but that idea of like, I'm getting the fuck out of here is,
You can
just
live and
doesn't-
die independently of each other.
Sure.
And I think we had a lot of comments early on. It was like, I don't like Evolve. We're like, well, this isn't 1v7, but that's the only way you can explain it.
Right.
So when you take it a level deeper, it is actually everyone
Absolutely.
working together or betraying each other.
I
Maybe.
like that you
Yeah.
have the choice and that you could
Yeah.
be playing, with a stranger across the world or whatever, and they could be cool or maybe not.
Yeah,
Mm.
and you'll know when they steal the boat from you after
Yeah,
you
yeah.
fix it, and they
Yeah.
leave you there standing when Jason shows up.
That
happens.
There's a lot of cussing in the playtest when that
Yeah,
happens, because you go stick a car
You
part, or-
especially have
yeah.
gotten screwed
Like
more than
many
anyone
times,
fixing the
many
boat.
times. Because
A
you
lot
gotta
of-
you gotta put parts on the boat because the boat is broken.
Right.
Right. But the boat only seats two.
Too.
Right.
But there's like 3 or 4 people that want it.
And so everyone is going out and looking for parts, and they find one, they come back, put it on the boat, and then you know, okay, you just need 2 more parts. or
But you don't
whatever.
want to walk away from the boat because you know someone might come up.
So you sort of feel like you're like, well, I kind of earned my seat, dude. I put one of these parts on.
Right.
You know, like And so you start to sort of like, camp around the boat area.
While Jason's stalking you.
Right. And
So,
Are you able to stop another player from?
well, we're still trying to figure out what happens.
Okay.
The interactions between the counselors.
Okay.
If we let you hit each other with weapons, that's
It's
just
over.
troll
Yeah,
alert. It's
yeah,
over.
right.
So we're trying to find the right way to have some type of interaction. There.
Okay.
We can't really say anything yet, but
Okay.
But it's interesting that you brought up Evolve, and it is something that
yeah.
becomes a quick comment from anyone who's done next to no research on what the game is about. They always say, "Oh, I hated Evolve."
I'm like,
And
that's a shooter,
Right.
I'm like,
and
okay.
it almost required teamwork.
Right.
I mean, it was a great game. I actually love it. But
I had nothing against
yeah, when
it
I
either.
play it, I feel trapped into a character class, and so I feel like I have to do teamwork.
Right.
Yeah.
Our classes are a lot
Well,
different.
here's the two major differences, if you were to just break it down into two. One's a competitive shooter, that's Evolve.
Yep.
There is absolutely no fucking way in the world you compete against Jason Voorhees.
Sure.
You don't do
There's
it.
no
Right.
competition.
So
Yeah.
Evolve is very
Kill the monster, hunt him.
exactly. Everything about it is pushing you towards conflict.
Sure.
That's Evolve. Conflict. Get into a fight. Go pick a fight. That's what that's asking you to do.
Yeah.
You don't want to pick a fight with Jason
Jason
Voorhees.
is the conflict. He's pursuing you.
And he's unstoppable. So, and he's overpowered for a reason, because that's how he is in the film. So, it couldn't be more night and day difference. It's just, I realize people need to compartmentalize things, and
Yeah.
I just need to, when something new comes along, they want to, well, what compared to? Well, it's kind of like
Because there's nothing on the
Evolve.
market.
Because
Right.
it's
There's no blueprint.
asymmetrical, but that's where it ends.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like
that's
if
it.
there were two NES games and Mario came out and then Zelda came out, they were like, "Well, I hate Mario."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are you even bringing it up? Because
Right.
it's 1v7.
It's the, it's the
1v4,
closest
asymmetrical.
thing they have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's a very clear difference between our games. And
I think for fans, that's absolutely clear. And
yeah, the
what
hardcore
you're-
fans get it. It's the casual people who really hadn't seen our Kickstarter video.
Filthy
or-
casuals.
And the negative comment leaver who hasn't left his negative comment today.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
He's
please.
got to get that out of his system.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Your thing sucks.
this is absolutely incredible. I didn't think I could be more excited about this game,
Cool.
but I absolutely am now. Wes, Ronnie, thank you guys so much for your time.
Yeah,
We
sure.
know
And the
you're very
candy.
busy. And the candy, yeah, they treat
have
us
much
like
more.
kings. So,
Yeah.
you guys will hear this after the Kickstarter campaign ends, which I'm sure will finish wonderfully. So for Bigger Show, this has been
Cameron Beach Isles.
I have been Mike D. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you next time. Goodbye.
Kick.